There's a moment that I've been experiencing the past few months that I admit hasn't been entirely uncommon with all that goes on in our world. I open the news just for a quick check of the headlines, and within seconds I'm pulled into a flood of all the horrible news happening around the world. There's the wars, the violence, the suffering, and all the sadness. I scroll for a few more minutes, maybe read an article or two, and then I try to go back to my own personal reality, acting as if the world isn't as bad as it really is. And in a strange way, that instinct, it's not only understandable, it may even be necessary. A similar kind of psychological numbing happens not only with the big crises of the world, but in small everyday moments of our lives. This is what allows us to drive our cars, essentially large hunks of metal at high speeds down the highway, trusting strangers around us. It allows us to walk through a city street without stopping for every person who asks for help, because we know we can't respond to every need we encounter. This is what allows us to read about suffering all across the world and get up the next morning, go to work and care for our families and live our lives. So numbing in this sense, it's not failure, it's a coping mechanism that allows us to survive. But like so much else, we have to recognize that when we start ignoring too much in our lives or the world, it leads us down a dangerous path of separation. Because over time, what begins as a necessary boundary can become a habit. And what starts as a way of protecting ourselves, it turns into indifference. This week's Torah portion, Acharei Mot-Kedoshim, which contains many of the key ethical laws which govern our relationships in our society, gives one commandment that seems to call out to us, especially powerfully during these times we're in. It says, "Do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor." The Torah doesn't ask us to feel everything, and it doesn't ask that we respond to everything, every crisis, everywhere. But it does draw a line and says that there are moments when turning away simply isn't acceptable. The challenge, of course, is that the Torah doesn't tell us exactly where that line is. The rabbis understood how dangerous it can be when we start ignoring the problems around us, though. And the Talmud goes even further, teaching whoever is able to protest against the wrongdoing of their household and does not is held responsible for their household. For their city, responsible for their city. For the whole world, they are responsible for the whole world. At the same time, thankfully, Jewish tradition recognizes that we have limits. In Pirkei Avot it says, "It is not upon you to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." And the philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, "In a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible." So if we aren't paying attention to everything, how do we decide what we must pay attention to? Maybe the answer isn't a clear rule, but kind of a practice. It might look like this. You read about a story about a family displaced by war, and instead of just scrolling past, you pause. You choose to do one thing, one small act. Maybe you make a donation, not to everything, but to one organization. Maybe you call up a friend just to check in, or send an email to someone in your community. Maybe you take a few minutes to learn a bit more about the issue you read about, a few steps beyond just the headlines so you understand more. Now, of course, these are small actions, and they don't necessarily fix all of the problems, but they take steps forward to add a little bit of hope into the world. None of these actions fix the world, but they are a refusal to stand idly by. We know our lives would be very different if we felt a small jolt every time we encountered something that clashed with our values or that needed our attention. If we, when speaking an unkind word, we felt a tightening in our throat, or when we turned away from someone in need, we felt some sort of physical resistance, it would be harder to ignore what really matters. But instead, our reality is we live with hearts and minds that flow freely. It's a gift and it's a challenge. And all this means that we must train ourselves to notice and recognize when our necessary numbing, we can call it, has gone too far. We need to start asking, where am I turning away too quickly? And push ourselves just to stay present when it would be easier not to. When things get difficult in our lives and the world, we have to remember that nothing is isolated. We are part of a larger system, a network of relationships, of responsibilities, and shared humanity. When we become too numb, something in that system gets blocked. Now, we may not be able to respond to everything, but the Torah reminds us, more importantly, that we are not allowed to respond to nothing.